is up? It has been a hot couple minutes or months. I am so bad at being consistent on here. I'm going to work on getting better. But first of all, I just want to say a couple things before we dive into making some ambient lo-fi. Just thank you to all of you lovely people out there who hopped on over to the Made in Ableton Live video I did like 2 weeks ago and left some lovely comments on there. I really, really appreciate it. And if you haven't checked it out, I'll put a link to that in the description below. And second of all, channel just hit 25,000 subscribers, which is amazing. And the ALS project file for today's video is going to be free. You can grab that on my Ko-fi page as a thank you for everyone who has supported my channel on here. So without further ado, let's dive into today's tutorial. First thing I want to do is set my scale and my tempo. So I'm going to click on my first MIDI track right here, and I'm going to hit Control A, and that's going to select every track I have. And then I'm going to come up to my scale settings and change it to C sharp minor for today. And this way, like when you click into different tracks, it doesn't default back to C major because you're selecting all of them and setting the scale to be C sharp minor for each one. And then let's take the tempo down to like 73, somewhere around there. So first thing I want to start with is some chords, and I'm going to grab Meld for this. Meld is like amazing for creating ambient patches. And I'm just going to start with a really simple kind of patch here and work on the chords and then come back to the sound design a little bit. So I'm going to change it from basic shapes to noisy shapes, which is one of my absolute favorites in here. Let's bring the attack up so it's a little bit softer. Bring the release up as well. Bring the shape and the roughness up a little bit. That introduces some really nice noise in there. So maybe somewhere like that for now. So let's go ahead and get some chords in here. So for the chords, I want to keep it really simple and just kind of have it go back and forth. So my chords, I want to keep pretty simple. I'm thinking we'll start with the 1, so maybe a C sharp minor 11, and then go down to the 6 in the scale, which is the A major, and I'll make it a 7th chord, so A major 7. So let me go ahead and record those in. So here's the MIDI for those chords that I played in, and this is the standard voicing. So we have the root on the bottom, all the way up to the 11th for the C sharp minor. And again, the A is the root up to the 7th. And these chords are sounding really nice together, but the problem is the voicing. And we see all of these notes up here, and they're kind of just like going into nothing, which isn't very good. And then we have these notes down here that are just staying the same. So we don't have really much movement. So what I want to do is create some inversions to make them work together a little bit better. So for this C sharp minor, I'm going to take this E and bring it up an octave. So I'm just going to click it, hold Shift, and press the up arrow on my keyboard. And I'm going to do the same thing with the B. And I'm going to bring that up an octave. So now we have this. And now for this A, let's do something similar. So I'm going to bring the C sharp up an octave as well. And let's take the fifth, of this chord. And I'm going to hit Control C and Control V to paste it right there. And then Shift and up to bring that up an octave as well. And let's do the same with the G sharp. So Control C and Control V, which doesn't look like I'm doing anything, but it's actually there, and then Shift and up. So now we have that reinforced up there as well. So now we have going into this. Much, much better. So we have almost every single note is kind of going somewhere. And we can reinforce these notes kind of sliding into each other even more if we open the MkIII section. And I'm going to come down here and change it from pressure to slide. And I'm just going to add some breakpoints here. So I'm thinking maybe about somewhere around here. This is kind of just up to what you would like to do. And I'm just going to pick some of these notes and have them kind of pitch bend down to the next note. So let's grab that one and bring that down to about here. I want it to be exact. So let's just right click and edit value. So that's going to be -3. And I'm going to do that with several of these. Which it sounds a little rough right now because we need to add some reverb and some other stuff to make it a little bit more ambient, but we can work on that. Okay, so let's work on shaping this sound. So I'm going to leave the shape there. Let's bring the roughness down a little bit, maybe somewhere around here. And let's come into the LFO section because you know we got to modulate like all of this stuff. Let's open this. So let's change it from basic shapes to wander, which is amazing for kind of like organic movement. And I'm going to change this to be rate. So let's make it a bit longer. So maybe a bar and a half. And you can just kind of play with the shape a little bit, make it kind of random however you'd like. And then I'm going to open up the matrix in here. And let's put some of that LFO onto both of these macros, so the shape and the rough, so it's constantly moving. So we'll come right here, LFO 1, and we want it to modulate macro 1. So let's do a little bit there, a little bit on this one as well. And it's just going to be really subtle movements, which is kind of what you want for ambient music. Let's up the spread a little bit. Now let's come over here to this auto filter, and let's turn the LFO amount up a little bit. And again, we're going to change it to wander, because we want this to be just kind of organic movement. And we're going to put the rate down a little bit slower, maybe somewhere like that. And then let's change this phase option as well, which is going to give you some amazing stereo width here. Let's add maybe, let's change this to the DFM and just add a tiny bit of drive. And let's throw a reverb on here. So let's just turn hybrid reverb onto the algorithmic side, maybe about 40%. Let's change it to the quartz option. Ooh. Could add a little bit of that. And let's do the damping just a little bit. And that sounds beautiful. Okay, so these chords sound really good. The only thing I want to do, you see when we open this all the way up, really we don't have much in terms of like higher frequencies except for kind of like noise. So I want to add a second layer here. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to insert a new MIDI track because that's going to be easier. So insert a new MIDI track. I'm going to hold control and drag these chords down. So exactly the same chords. And I'm going to use Wavetable for this. So let's just do this real quick. And so for higher frequencies, I kind of want something that's closer to a saw wave. So maybe around there. And let's do a similar kind of amplitude envelope to the other chords. So a slower attack, lots of release. So it's kind of flowing into each other. And we're going to do kind of the same thing with the phase and the LFO on this one as well. So everything is kind of just going back and forth. Okay, so this sounds good. I want to grab a chorus and let's drop it on there and change it to vibrato mode. And we're getting that kind of like nice pitch wobble. That's a little too much though. Let's take the rate down and the amount. And it's kind of up to you how much you want to do here. I think somewhere around there sounds pretty good. So now we have this nice kind of stable bottom end for this one from Meld. And then if we want to open this up, we can have some really, really nice, just kind of harsher top end as well. And let's also copy this hybrid reverb. So I'm literally just going to hold control on my computer, grab it, and drag it over to here. Cool. Next, let's add a bass. I'm going to just make it a really simple bass. I'm going to use Vital. Let's drop that on this MIDI track, and let's go ahead and change this to the basic shapes and take this up to here. And let's turn on oscillator 2. And we're going to change that to just a saw wave. There we go. And let's also turn on the filter down here. Let's take the resonance down, change this from 12 dB to a little bit steeper, 24, so it's going to cut off even more of those higher frequencies. And make sure both of the oscillators are routed to filter 1, just like that. Cool. And we're pretty much done. I'm not even kidding. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of unison. So I'm going to take this up to maybe like 3 voices. And what I want to do also is turn on the glide. So again, just like those chords, it's going to go back and forth between the notes. So Control-Shift-M for my MIDI clip. And let's go down. C#1 sounds about the right range. So I'm just going to drag that here. And then we have the A. Let's add some drums. Okay, so this is the kick that I'm going to use. And the snare. And I've had people ask me, like, why do I use audio sometimes? Why do I use MIDI sometimes? And it really is just kind of what I feel like that day. You can honestly do either one, and it's totally fine. So I'm going to do the snare on every 2 and 4. So let's just select that region and just duplicate that out like that. And kick is just going to be a really simple pattern. Let's see. Put that on the 1. Really simple. So before we finish off the drums, I want to take a look at the kick and bass real quick. I'm going to load a VST plugin called Span on my master channel real quick. And let's just take a look at where the kick and the bass are both hitting. So I'm going to solo the kick. So right around here at about C2. And the bass. This is obviously a C#, so we have a lot going on in the same area. So what I want to do is I'm going to use an envelope follower to create kind of like a side chain just for those frequencies. So let's find the envelope follower. I'm going to put that on the kick channel. And then let's go to the bass and let's just use number 2. So let's put that at about 60, somewhere around there is fine. And let's map this to the gain on that number 2. And then, so right now we see it's not doing at all what we want it to do. So I'm going to change this to remote. And we want it to be at 50, which should be in the middle. And then we want it to drop down by a little bit in volume. So let's see what that does. So every time the kick hits, it's ducking those frequencies. That's a little much though. So let's change the cue to be a little bit more focused. So that's just going to help the bass and the kick work together a little bit instead of ducking everything. So next I'm going to add a shaker. So I found this one that I really like. It just has a really nice texture that I feel like goes with the rest of the track. I just don't want to use the entire thing though. So what I'm going to do is cut out like a bunch of one shots from inside this. So I'm just going to select some of these individual hits in here and do Control-E, and that's going to cut it out. I'll do the same thing with this one, the first one here. Control-E, and maybe like this one. And I'm going to take these individual pieces and just kind of create my own rhythm using it. So this is the rhythm that I came up with. We can also come in here and I have a delay. So it's set to about 40% wet, and I have it set to 3/3, and that's just going to add some little extra rhythm in there. Also some extra stereo width, which is always nice. And let's add an EQ to make sure that it's not too high up in the frequency range. I also found like one other kind of ambient percussion sound that I cut out of another loop. Very, very minimal, but it's adding a lot of extra kind of groove to the rest of this track with all of the drums together. Cool, I think drums are done. Let's move on to a melody. So since we're going for that kind of liminal vibe, I really just want something very simple. So I found this melody that I really like. Please disregard the trash sounding sound design at the moment. But the point is we got the notes in. First of all, we need to add an auto filter. Like auto filters basically go on everything. So let's put that there. And we're gonna do the same thing. Let's up the LFO a little bit and take the rate down. All right, let's add another return track. So I'm gonna right click on any of these down here, insert return track, and let's grab hybrid reverb again. And let's drop that on there. So let's make sure this is at 100% since it's on a return track. And let's change this so it's not in parallel. We just want the convolution. And let's change it to bigger spaces. And this one I found sounds really, really nice for ambient. So let's send that. Let's also change this echo that I have on a return track as well. So I'm going to change it to quarter notes, and let's change this to ping pong as well. Up the reverb on the echoes and send some of this to that as well. So the last thing I want to add before arranging is a nice kind of ambient ethereal vocal, and this is one of my favorite things to add. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop out kind of like this section and this section as well. So it's a little fast. So what I want to do is hold shift, and I'm just going to stretch this a little bit. And same with this one. Okay, and you all know that I try not to use many third-party plugins, but for this one, I really, really love Portal. It is one of the few plugins that I still actually use, and it's just kind of magical. I don't know what it is about it. It's kind of like a soundscape. It's just beautiful the way that it works. So here is the finished project file after I went through and arranged everything. I really only added, I think, like 2 new things. So I added this wavetable echo is what I'm calling it. So it's exactly the same patch as the main melody. It's just 100% echoes. So I have echo dropped on here at 100%, so we're not even hearing the dry signal at all. Feedback is cranked up, so you can hear it just kind of dying out very slowly. The other thing I did is I froze that vocal with Portal on it. And then I also added another free plugin called Valhalla Supermassive, which is a really cool reverb delay. So it sounds extra, extra ambient, beautiful. So that's just kind of sitting in the background through the entire track. One other thing I did was I took that vocal, same exact vocal, just reversed it and pitched it up an octave. It's kind of a cool effect toward the end of the track. And the last thing I added was this ambience, which is just some rain. So real quick, we can look at a little bit of the automation as well. And like this is a good time to pop open the project file and you can see all of the stuff that I've done here. So there's a lot of automation happening, especially toward the end, just to kind of open things up. So I'm opening the auto filter at this point, just to let more of those upper frequencies in. Same with these. So we still have that LFO that's kind of modulating the macro 1 and macro 2, but I also added automation to give it even more kind of organic movements. And that's pretty much everything that went into making this track. Like I said, you can download this project file for free off of my Ko-fi. You can also stream it if you would like to listen to it. And it's on all of the major streaming platforms as well as my Bandcamp, which is new. I'll put links to all of this in the description below. This one is called These Dreams Are All I Have Left. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Take care.